Welcome, Rotarians and guests. I'd ask that you stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask that you remain standing, and I'll ask Joel Dykstra to come forward for the invocation.
Please bow your heads with me. Father God, we come to you today and we thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that we have to gather under the Rotary banner and to celebrate our community, growth, and development of Sioux Falls, Lord. And we just ask that you will continue to guide us. Lord, we thank you today for the relationships that we have that are part of Rotary and the leadership that we enjoy. And we ask that you bless this food unto our bodies. Amen.
All right, you may be seated. And we have a number of guests in the audience. I'm going to point out a few that traveled further than some others. Chuck and Suzanne Krauss are joining us from King City, California. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And he didn't come from California, but he did come from Brookings. Don Norton, their past president, is with us as well. Thank you for joining us today, Don. And then we do have a full program, and we do have a lot of guests. So we're just going to ask that all guests rise at this time to be recognized. All right, I want to thank the greeters that helped us today. And if you've worn that hat before, you know there's no better way to get to know others and to put a face with a name than to greet. So if you're willing and able, there's always opportunities for you to help welcome Rotarians. I'm excited for today. Not only do we have our district president with us, we also are going to hear from an organization that will be moving to town or will be constructing a major facility. We'll hear more about that. But before we do, we're going to welcome Doug Lind to the stage. For those that have been part of Rotary for some time, you know that we are one of many clubs throughout the region, throughout the state, throughout the country, and throughout the world. We have our district president here who represents the 42 clubs in this region, and he'll speak about what the work of those clubs is doing, what his vision for the coming year is, and excited to hear from him. And then as soon as he's done, we will transition into our program and have past President Herrboldt moderate a conversation with Scott Webb. With that, I'd ask Doug Lind to come to the stage. Please join me in giving him a warm downtown Rotary welcome.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's great to be here today, and it's great to see some familiar faces. I've got several people I know here. This year's our district treasurer is Steve Sikorsky, and I believe he's probably still, oh, there he is, right there. And thank you, Steve, for all of your service, and thank you for your warm welcome. You guys are obviously very well organized. So to begin with, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life outside of Rotary. And to begin with, I will see if this works. Yeah. My brother and I started a company called Lindexco 50 years ago, this year in April. And these are a couple examples. Oops. I guess this thing is just kind of going on its own here, isn't it? This is a couple examples of the type of projects we build. We are a heavy civil contractor, now build highways and utility systems, things like that. This is a picture of my wife, Penny, along with my son, John, doing what we love to do. We love to golf. Another picture of my wife and son, John. Daughter, Casey, and other picture of my other daughters and my granddaughters, Stella, Emma, and Harper. And a picture of one of our little fur babies. Happens to be Gracie, and the other one is Fancy. So, as I've been driving around our district, I've had lots of times to think about what I do as a Rotarian and how I do it. And at the end of it all, it really comes down to why. Why do I do what I do as a Rotarian? Why do we all do what we do as Rotarians? You know, this year's President Shaker Maida has a theme that is very simple and to the point, and it is, we serve to change lives. You know, several years ago, while I was a club president of our Rushmore Rotary Club in Rapid City, we found ourselves in a position the need to quickly develop and implement a project to help a family known as the Fastwolf family, 10 adopted children who had lost their home in a terrible, terrible fire in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Their home and everything that they owned went up in this horrible fire. And because of Rushmore Rotary, they soon had a home to live in, a well-stocked kitchen with new appliances and furnishings and clothes to wear. And I remember that day especially well as we stood on the front porch of their new home and watched the caravan of pickups full of Rotarians, full of groceries and appliances and furnishings and clothes. And that look of relief and gratitude as this caravan pulled up through their driveway, and those tears of relief, and how Rotary, because of that one day, will have a special place in their heart forever. And I remember over the years, the children of Black Hills Children's Home, part of Children's Home Society, which you're familiar with here in Rapid City, whose faces light up when they get to help out at the Rotary-sponsored Children's Home Golf Tournament, which happens to be being held today, actually, as we speak. And the kids come and help us there, or when they receive special gifts at the Rotary Christmas party. Now, this is my why. This is why I do what I do in Rotary. Now, we all joined to network. We joined to make new friends and business connections, possibly. But we became Rotarians when we found our why. And I assume everybody here has a different why. We all know what that is. Whether it's brightening the life of a child or bringing clean drinking water to a village someplace far away, or raising money to forever wipe out the scourge of polio. And we all know about that. Or maybe to helping to make our community a better place to live. So what is your why? Can you tell that story to others? Just remember, no two Rotarians will ever answer that question exactly the same way. Now, our President Shaker Maida found his why in empowering girls, ensuring their access to education and resources and services and opportunities so that future generations of women leaders will always have the tools they need to succeed. He says, service is the rent I pay for the space I occupy on this earth. And I always want to be a good tenant of this earth. Powerful words, very simple but powerful. So over the course of the past year, I've been asked by many people what my special signature project will be, because a lot of district governors have had those special signature projects. And I did think long and hard about that, but I finally decided the most important project with the most urgency in our district right now is the health and well-being and positive growth of this district. We finally begin to enter now into a post-pandemic era where we as members of District 5610 must do everything we can do to grow our membership. And you guys are a great example of the way to do that. Sioux Falls is a wonderful example, downtown Sioux Falls, of how to grow your membership. So as we come into this post-pandemic period, how will Rotary serve and change lives during these times of transition? forgotten all about our slides here. This is President Shaker Mehta. And there is his thing. Now, part of our district's strategic plan is the trilogy, and I'm sure many of you are aware of what the trilogy is. We must have members. One side is the membership side. We must have members to fulfill the Rotary mission, and if we have more members, we will have more resources available for use by our project funding arm, which is the Rotary Foundation. And the third leg, public image, says that more good news will be able to tell through increased public image campaigns, and the more people want to become members. So that's why these three committees are such an important part, and it's important to have club goals. Now, President Mehta's new membership initiative, oops, these slides are kind of messed up. New membership initiative is each one bring one. And I think this is important, and I will tell you, I will do whatever I can to help this happen in our district as well. Now, it's no secret that our district membership has been on a decreasing trend, unlike your membership, but across the district it has been decreasing. Now, we need to reverse this trend with everyone's help. And if each one in our district and around the world, if each Rotarian can just bring one member by July 1st, 2022, we will dramatically change the trends of growth in Rotary. So I'm sure that each one of you knows at least one friend or business associate or a neighbor who'd make a great Rotarian. And with more members, we'll have more dollars to build projects, and doing that will help make the environment safer and healthier for our children. And we will all have great stories to share. So let's talk about membership. Now, part of a successful club membership plan is membership retention. And this is often an overlooked part of a successful membership plan, but I feel it's a very vital part. New members can often bring new life and new energy to a club, but current members, the ones that are sitting out here today, are the ones that are the stabilizing force and the lifeblood of a healthy club. Now, it takes almost 3 new members to equal 1 current member of 18 months because of the expected new member turnover rate. And this year, I'm urging you all to try a new plan, a new idea called intentional retention. Now, member retention is often an afterthought and usually not considered an important part of the membership plan. And intentional retention will not guarantee retention of all members, of course, but it will definitely improve the odds. So how is this different than what we're doing now? It's much the same as being accidentally successful versus being purposely and intentionally successful. And obviously that's the ideal way. Intentional retention involves member engagement. Now, it's important that obviously that new members get engaged, but it's also very important that existing members be engaged. Are all your members engaged? Something in committee work or leadership track or project involvement? If they're not, they need to be, if they're going to stay members. It's a critical part of giving value to all our members. Member tracking. I'm sure that your secretary is taking attendance today, and that's important. But that, in a lot of cases, in many clubs, that's as far as that tracking goes. Now, after a new member especially has missed 3 or 4 meetings, it becomes increasingly more and more difficult for that absent member to return, and easier to ignore weekly meetings than that commitment. And also, that absent member might begin to wonder, do they even notice I'm not there? So it's an important part of retention is follow-up, calling those members that haven't been there for 3 weeks or more and checking in. And there usually is a good reason for their absence, but it never hurts to tell a member that they've been missed. Third and final component of intentional retention is creating a culture of respect and individual value. Because in any relationship, team members are happiest and most committed when they feel valued. Feeling valued goes hand in hand with being engaged. Now, the final leg of the trilogy is public image. So does your community really know Rotary? For as long as Rotary has been in existence, branding and marketing has been an important part. But in lots of communities, it remains a very well-kept secret. If you ask a person on the street, what is Rotary? How many times will they say, I've never heard of it before. So it's important that we always display our Rotary and our club brand and know how to talk to people about what Rotary is. These are, let's see, just how does your financial contribution to Rotary Foundation, how is that used to serve to change lives? You know, I'd been a member of Rushmore Rotary for more than a year before I realized that Rotary International was so much more than a weekly breakfast meeting and a few fun local projects. Projects like Hope Haven, the wheelchair project that Steve Sikorsky is involved with, is a great example of an international project. Now, I'd glimpsed over a few articles in my monthly Rotarian, but until I really heard it from the horse's mouth that first time, somebody that had been involved in a large international project, I didn't really comprehend the depth and breadth of our organization. My first exposure was at a district conference and talking about bringing safe water to a community in Guatemala, where people, usually the women of the community, had always carried water in vessels over their shoulders for 7 miles so that they could have clean water to bathe their children and cook their food and to drink. And with the help of Rotary, they brought a well to those people, and it obviously had a huge impact on their lives. That day had a great impact on me as well and gave me a new appreciation for what Rotary International does around the world. Now, Rotary dollars don't just go around the world either. Many life-saving projects happen right here in your own backyard, and we all know about those and the good things that downtown Sioux Falls Rotary has done. And there's a variety of grant opportunities that most of you are aware of. Today we have the pleasure of having our grants chairman for this year with us, Don Norton from Brookings, doing a great job. District grants can help with projects right here in your own community because, believe me, good work does start at home. Now, in keeping with President Shaker's theme of empowerment for girls across the world, our district is committed to the cause of ending human trafficking. Which directly affects the quality of life for young girls around the world, and even here at home, sadly. Now, Jennifer Rollins of Rapid City and her team have been hard at work for a year now, working to shine a light on the horrors of human trafficking and what we as Rotarians can do to help bring it to an end. The CHT team and our district leadership are also in the process of applying for a global grant to help end human trafficking. And I know that Jennifer either has presented here or will be presenting here an excellent presentation. Now, luckily, one of the district's best events to encourage member engagement, to learn about projects of other clubs, and to have a lot of fun is coming up very soon. And that, of course, is our district conference, October 14th through the 16th in Deadwood. Now, this will be our first district-wide in-person event in 3 years. And it promises to be one you don't want to miss. We've got some excellent dynamic speakers. John Huco, CEO of Rotary, is coming to present to us. We have Lisa Herring from Texas coming to talk about public image and membership. A number of great speakers from across the country. I recall the gentleman's name, coming from Idaho to talk about polio and his experiences. Along with that, some fabulous breakout sessions, lots of great food and entertainment, and it is in Deadwood, obviously at Cadillac Jack's Casino and Resort. Be an excellent, excellent time to be had by all. And they do know there are some early bird specials out there for all of you that sign up early, and lots of family tours and fun events planned. Now, my goal this year as district governor is to empower every club and every Rotarian to make an impact on the world one way or another, whether that's someone who needs you here in town, here in Sioux Falls, or around the world. Because we are at the end of it all, at the end of the day, all about service above self. So as you can see, District 5610 is busy and thriving, and despite all we've been through, at International Assembly, which is my district governor's training, one thing our president Maida said that really hit home was that the light at the end of the tunnel is here, and it's now. So we always need to remember to keep safe practices in mind for all of our members first and foremost, but then to move forward with positive and intentional purpose. The past year for many of us has been a time of reflection and isolation in some cases, and a time of self-awareness. Now it's time to come together in fellowship, enthusiasm, and fun, and to do good, and to make ourselves, our communities, and our world better and stronger. Thank you. And one thing I almost forgot, I'm pleased to be able to present to Tony and to Downtown Sioux Falls Rotary Club this year's theme banner, Serve to Change Lives. Thank you, Tony.
Doug, thank you. Thank you for your years of service and this year of service. As you said, so many of the topics that you touched on resonate with us as we come out of this pandemic, and we're poised for growth and for a renewed time of fellowship. We look forward to continuing to work with you, the district, and our communities to transform lives. So thank you for the lives that you're working to transform. Another person that we lost on Friday also helped transform lives. You saw my email this morning. Glenn Jorgensen passed away with Phyllis by his side on Friday. In his time with us, you may know Glenn's story in overcoming or dealing with addiction. Started River Park, the state's first nonprofit treatment center, privately funded nonprofit treatment center for alcoholism. And for those who came in touch with Glenn, and I had an opportunity through my work with Volunteers of America, one of the most gracious individuals and a person that really, when you look at the four-way test and service above self, that gave of himself first and foremost, and he definitely will be missed. So you may have seen my email. There will be a celebration of his life on Saturday. For those that are able to make it at 10:30 a.m. at Abiding Savior Free Lutheran Church. Visitation will be the evening prior on Friday at Heritage Funeral Home. So next we will turn to Wholestone Farms. And I'm going to turn it over to past President Jason Herrboldt to moderate the conversation, to understand for many of us, Wholestone Farms may not have been in our vocabulary prior to a month ago. So we really want to hear from the organization that will be moving to our community. And I want to thank Rotarian Steve Watson for helping to make this possible today. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason and Scott Webb.
Thank you, President Tony, and thank you, fellow Rotarians and guests, for joining us today. And most importantly, thank you, Scott, for coming up to Sioux Falls and paying this club and this community a visit. You know, as the Downtown Rotary Club has evolved over the last 18 months or so, we have taken great pride in developing programming that approaches difficult substantive, important conversations in a way that is civil. Oftentimes you lose context when you're getting your information from social media. And so I think we are about to deliver an outstanding program on an important announcement. And we are just thrilled, Scott, to have you joining us to talk about this important announcement for your company. But Scott, I really want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the club, introduce Wholestone Farms, and teach us a little bit about yourself and this organization.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here with everybody. This is an amazing group that you have here. You should be proud of them, Governor. From what I can tell from other Rotaries that I've had the pleasure to speak with. So a little bit about Wholestone Farms. So Wholestone Farms is a farmer-owned pork processing company. Has roughly 212 producer owners that make up the company. That group of producers collectively raise about 500,000 acres of cropland and 12 million pigs per year. So they were searching for ways to find a sustainable future for the next generation of the farm. And in today's environment, if you're selling pigs to just a packer, that's difficult. Many of our owners are second, third generation. We have 2 fifth generation owners, and they all want to pass on to the next generation. So how do we do that? Well, the first step was we need to move further downstream in the earnings side of this thing. And the way to do that is to purchase the plant, or purchase a plant and get started in that avenue and participate in both the processing margins. I won't go into the lingo on it because if you're not familiar with it, it'll confuse you. But then there's also sales margins that a typical farmer does not participate in. So they made the investment and bought the Fremont, Nebraska plant from Hormel in December of 2018. And they did everything right. They well capitalized the company with their money. They had a 3-year deal with Hormel where all the product went to Hormel for the first 3 years. So there was no concern of where's the product going to go. And they structured the company. So the company is an LLC at the top and a cooperative at the operating level. And the reason it's a cooperative is there's a tax law called the 199AG that's very beneficial to farmers. So me personally, I've spent my entire career in this industry. I graduated from college in 1985. I went to work for, back then it was called Farmland Industries. Moved over to Farmland Foods. They were acquired by Smithfield Foods. Later left and went to work for Seaboard for 3 years. And then in January of 2019, a month after the startup of the company, I came on board here. And I will tell you, I have never looked back. Not that big companies are bad, that's not the point, but this has been a lot of fun. And the reason it's a lot of fun is because our farmers they're entrepreneurs. We call them farmers, but they're really highly skilled entrepreneurial business people is what they are. And they expect me and allow me to run the company the same way. We have a slogan at Wholestone, and it's GSD. I'll just let you figure out what that stands for. Get blank done. And that's what farmers do, right? That's what they do. I want to share just real briefly, if I can,
Please,
a little bit about the culture that makes them different as a farmer-owned company. So I joined the company in January. I'm new to Fremont. I'm a Kansas boy. I grew up in north central Kansas, spent 25 years of my adult life in Kansas City. So I'm new to Fremont, and start January 7th. I think it was March 14th. We had a 150-year flood event and devastated the community. 112 of our employees lost everything. And within 3 days, our employees, we have about 1,240 employees there in Fremont, just passing the hat, raised $60,000 to pass back to their fallen comrades, their fellow employees. 2 days after that, I'm at my first board meeting in March, a week after the flood. We're holding it over in Omaha because everything's kind of shut down in Fremont. And I'm sharing that story with my board. I've got pictures of our plant manager getting to the plant in a big old payloader because that's the only way you could get there for about 3 days. And they, without question, said, match it. So I matched, on behalf of the company, was able to match that. We were able to give $120,000 back to our fallen comrades. But that was just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, checks started coming in from as small as $500 to as big as $50,000 from all these different farmer owners, none of which live in Fremont, by the way. And before it's all said and done, there was over $500,000 that I'm sitting there talking to United Way and Lutheran Social Services and Salvation Army of how can we use this to help the community. And that's the kind of people they are. Why do they care so much? I remember the director of United Way saying, why do your farmers care so much about Fremont when none of them live here? And I said, this plant is as big a part of their livelihood as their farms are. If this plant goes down, it's a significant impact to them. So they care. And I just wanted to share that because they and I and our team will bring the same thing to Sioux Falls when we come to Sioux Falls.
Scott, I appreciate that background, and I certainly appreciate that story. As you well know, Sioux Falls is a giving community. We have prided ourselves on advancing this community through not only through good work, but the community chips in constantly over and over again for important causes. So we appreciate that background. You know, Sioux Falls has a pork processing plant, a big one, been here for decades and decades and decades. As Tony mentioned when he introduced you, Wholestone Farms is a new name for most, if not nearly everybody in Sioux Falls. Help us understand why Sioux Falls fits within the strategic plan of Wholestone Farms. You have a plant in Fremont. It's relatively new. Now you're moving into Sioux Falls. How does that fit?
Good question. So when this group originally started, and this goes back to 2016, and they were trying to figure out where can they build or acquire a plant, the site that we have since purchased here in Sioux Falls, they put down a contract, an option to buy that land. And the original intent was to build a greenfield plant here, but they were still working, there was about 6 farmers working together to try to find a plant. Right at the 11th hour, the Fremont opportunity popped up with Hormel, so they bought that plant. But since 2016, we've continued to retain that option. And now we're at a point where in January of 22, we will start selling product under our label. And we're gearing up to second shift the Fremont plant. When that's done, we'll harvest 6 million head a year. Well, as I said earlier, we have 12 million pigs within our group, so we need another plant. On top of that, because of the success of the model that was created, I take no credit for it. The guys that started the company created this model. We've got over, I'm going to say 150 farmers that have approached us that are not members that want to become members. And so first and foremost, we needed to start looking at another plant. We had the option on this site. Of our current 212 owners, 70 of them live within 50 miles and live and farm within 50 miles of Sioux Falls. So it makes very logical sense. If I go out 100 miles, it's probably 120 of them, or maybe 150 of them. I haven't done the math yet, but the proximity to the farms, actually Sioux Falls is better proximity than Fremont. And we only have one owner in Nebraska. Most of our owners, we cross over 6 states, but most of them are in South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. And so Sioux Falls is like an ideal location. The site is ideal for a plant. It's right next to a major interstate as far as getting trucks in and out. It just made all the sense in the world for all those reasons. And I want to add one other thing, that this is an ag state, and that's what we do. We are ag.
Thank you. As I mentioned on the phone the other day, Scott, I grew up on a farm, and we raised a lot of hogs, at least by the standards in the 80s and 90s. Not a lot by today's standards. And I understand the industry a little bit, but probably more than most people in the community. And some people may have an impression of what a processing plant looks like, how they conduct business. Can you just talk about how the evolution of the industry has changed over the course of the last 20 or 30 years?
Absolutely. Can you pull up the first slide, please? I only have 2 slides. Is it up? The picture? Okay, this is a rendering of what the new plant will look like. So I'm going to go down a little memory lane here with you. I grew up around raising pigs, and then I've worked in this space since I got out of college, and had a 4.5-year stint when I was at Farmland where I managed 130,000 sows spread over 6 states. So I learned a lot about raising pigs. But when I started, pigs were raised outside on the dirt. Packing plants were a lot like the one that you have ingrained in your head that's been here in this town for over 100 years. They were 6-8 stories tall. Everything started up top, and then gravity flowed down. And the farms have evolved over the last 25 to 30 years to where now they're environmentally controlled settings. The pigs are well treated. The temperature is controlled. There's airflow. Complete different design than today of what we had, say, even 20 years ago. And the same thing's true with processing plants. Processing plants today, like the picture up there, it's a 1-story where everything runs. The pigs come in. Let's just say it runs north to south. The pigs come in the north end, and the product comes out the south end. And it's one straight line, 1 story. A lot of automation. Technology continues to improve, and there will be more by the time we're actually installing technology into this plant. There's some new stuff. Unfortunately, it's coming out of Europe, but it's still new stuff that will help versus coming out of the USA. But a lot of what we would call ergonomically difficult jobs have now been replaced by robotic technology, and that allows us to take those resources that would have been doing that and redeploy them in other areas that aren't as ergonomically difficult to do. The other nice thing about the technology is it enhances shelf life and quality of the product. And but basically, it's a 1-story facility. It will look like I had made a presentation I've done so many media presentations since the announcement. I've lost track, and I really don't like doing those, by the way. It's not who I am, but I had one lady is interviewing me, and she's got a picture of the drawing pulled up, and she goes, "So I thought you said your corporate office is in Lincoln or in Fremont. This looks like a corporate office." I said, "No, this is a plant." But that's what a plant looks like. It'll have a very modern, open, lots of windows, cafeteria, meeting places, locker rooms, like our new locker rooms in Fremont, for example, that we just completed last year, are no different than they'd look if you walked through a modern middle school today. Open, with changing rooms off to the side, and it's just a different setting than what I know you all have ingrained in your head for 112 years. And having worked for Smithfield as part of my career, I've been in that plant many, many times, and there's a lot of stairs to go up and down when you're doing things, and it's just different. It's not that it's bad, it's just very different.
Mm-hmm. We're going to spend a little bit of time here later talking about the project and the intricacies of the project. But I know, Lisa, I've been thinking about a lot of this, and I know most people probably have as well, but the food industry has changed a lot, continues to change. We all know people who are vegetarians. We're even starting to know people who are vegans, and they don't consume any product from any animal, or they're getting meat produced in a petri dish or a lab of some sort. Help us understand the market for your product today and how you see that changing, if at all, in the future.
That's a very good question, and he knows this because we talked on the phone last week, but that one hits really close to home. I have 2 daughters. My youngest one was a Division I athlete and came home after the end of her sophomore year and let mom and dad know that she is now vegan. And my wife just went off Your dad put you through college selling meat. But, you know, we've gotten past that. If that's what she stands for right now. And, you know, there could be a lot worse things that my child could stand for. So, you know, but it's a good question, and it's something that gets a lot of buzz. There's a lot of activity. I'll just say activity in the media that is activist based with a vegan title, if you will. But here's the reality. If you look at, you got to look at it two ways. There's a domestic consumption of food products, and there's a global consumption. When you look at the domestic consumption, the vegan, vegetarian, those two categories combined represent about 6% of the protein consumed in this country. And it's been flat for 3 years. So despite everybody's opinion and social media, it's not growing. What is growing at the expense of meat, and it's not just pork. When I say meat, this is pork, poultry, and beef. Meat has declined about 14% over the last 5 years. The category called flexitarians, which are people that try to eat, they still eat meat, and 80% of them believe meat is a key component to their diet, to a healthy diet. They just try to eat less of it. And that's 19% of the category. And the remaining 4% are how do you say it? Pescatarian? Fish. It's fish. So flexitarians, people eating more but less, but meat's still right at 80%. So will vegan and vegetarian continue to grow? Yes, it will. But are we concerned about it taking major share? No, we're not. We don't have time today to go through all the details. But I want to shift now to the global aspect. And if you could pull up my second slide. So when you look at globally, pork is the #1 animal protein in the world. Even though it's not in the US, globally, it's hands down #1. And when you look at the projections, the most recent projections of GDP growth over the next 10 years coming out of the IMF, it's 27 trillion US dollars growth, which is 30% more than the prior 10 years. And then you add all that up and you do the math, it's a staggering 35 billion pounds, of incremental just pork, and it's 78 billion pounds of pork, poultry, and beef. The 35 billion pounds of pork that are going to be needed just to feed the growth in the population base in the emerging markets. Emerging markets that have middle-class consumers like we have in the US are growing rapidly. Between 2011 and 2019 alone, there were 54 million new middle-class buyers in the world outside of the USA. That number is expected to grow at an even more rapid pace. So frankly, what we're going to be dealing with as a world, I think, is we can't grow the farms and the processing facilities fast enough to meet the demand for product. So I think that's going to be, that's why we need another plant. That's why we need to do what we're doing. The other thing you mentioned was the lab-based. So the lab-based, I think, as everybody probably knows, is currently in its infancy stages and is not affordable and frankly doesn't taste very good. Okay. Now as money comes into the market, like it has with plant-based protein, they will figure out a way to make it less expensive and how to make it taste better over time. But we believe that that's a 10-year window just to get from where we are today to there, and then probably a generation after that before it becomes widespread acceptable in the average American consumer's home. So now we may be wrong, but the bottom line is I think the next 10 years, the demand globally for animal protein is going to be high. So
I enjoyed the visit that we had last week on this topic.
That's a sensitive one for me.
And we could spend at least another 2 hours on that topic itself. Well, you made the business case based on the size of the market. And here you are, you're coming into Sioux Falls with a major investment to the tune of $500 million. give us an overview of the project. What is this gonna? I know you talked about the outside of the facility, what it looks like. What do you guys see in terms of square footage and how much volume are you going to produce?
No, good, all good questions. So the plant we would build the plant completely out, which is roughly $500 million investment in totality. Somewhere, we don't know exactly because we're not done with all the designs, but I'm going to say somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000 square feet. Now that's everything. That would be production, offices, cafeterias, locker rooms, the whole footprint, what have you. We would employ roughly 1,000 to 1,100 people from the production side, probably 100, 150 in the office, maintenance, QA, those types of things. Initially, would start it out as a single shift plant. We would build it as a double shift plant, start it up as a single shift, processing roughly 3 million head per year. And then after we probably have a year or two under our belt, we would begin the process, and the process would take 12 to 18 months to ramp up a second shift. And at that point, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,500 employees. I can't sit here and tell you what wages will be because the build out, if the earliest, and there's lots of factors that play into whether we start this coming spring or the following spring. There's a lot of moving parts, but if we start next spring, it's 2.5 years build. So you're 2025 before you're actually starting to hire people. And so there's a lot of things that have to come into play before we get to that point. So
I want to come back to the regional impact. You talked about the number of farmers that are partners in Wholestone Farms, but you touched on hourly wages, and I think that's a good time now to maybe talk about the supply of labor and just labor in general. And everyone is concerned about the supply of labor. Every business in this community, every business in this country is paying close attention to the supply of labor. I presume you've thought a lot about this. Does it concern you?
I don't want to say there's not concern, but the thing we have on our side is time. We wouldn't start hiring until probably 25. So a lot of things can change between now and then. But probably more importantly is and this isn't a political answer, it's a real answer, but is we want to be part of the solution in the community. And whether that's because this community is growing. We're not the only company building a plant here. Last time I checked, there's a few others. So your population base is going to grow here. And that means there's going to be demand for more housing, more affordable housing, more labor, et cetera. So we believe that it will be there. I mean, a lot can change between now and then with government policies and what have you. And to say we're not concerned, but we're realists that we need to tackle it and get on it right away. And challenge our peer groups in the community to get on it with us. But we want to be part of the solution. We want to work. We have the same issue in Fremont. I mean, part of the issue we're dealing with right now is a function of coming out of the COVID pandemic and the government paying people more to stay home than to come to work. You got that going on, not to get political, but that supposedly will end in September. But yeah, everywhere you go, they're battling for labor. Some of that's self-inflicted and will resolve itself in due time. But, in Fremont, and we'll do the same thing here. We're working with the community right now because we know we're going to second shift, and that's 900 more people we got to bring on board. And so we're working with the community, some local and regional builders and investors to begin the process of building affordable housing that will be ready to move into by the time we're ready to the second shift the plant. And things like that are going to have to happen up here as well, not just with us, but with everybody that's building new facilities here. And our position right now is we want to work with the community and be part of the solution. And the housing is probably the bigger concern more so than the labor, I would say.
Just maybe I misunderstood. So Wholestone Farms is looking to partner with investors to actually develop housing.
With the
housing.
community.
Okay.
And then with the builders and other investors that would be interested in
Okay.
coming in and building these types, affordable housing complexes.
Okay.
And so we're just getting started with that in Fremont. We haven't done anything with it here, but we're getting our feet wet with it in Fremont, and are open to doing the same here. But obviously, we need to have the conversations with people like you and other civic leaders in the city to see how to best go about it. And then can we collaborate with our peer group out there to the more of us working together, the more successful we're going to be in making it happen versus us coming in and doing it on our own with the city. So that's a bit of a challenge, I guess, to maybe some of the other new people coming to town, that we're willing to work with you and the community to make it happen.
Your peer group comment struck a chord. I don't know how many processing plants there are in the country. We already have one. You've talked about, you spent a lot of time in detail talking about how large the industry is. Tying that into the labor pool, tying that into the amount of affordable housing or housing in general in Sioux Falls. Can the labor pool in Sioux Falls support both Wholestone Farms and Smithfield?
That's a good question too. And I guess only time will tell for sure, but we believe that with, I can't quote the numbers off the top of my head, but this city's population growth over the last 10 years has been significant. And I wouldn't be surprised that over the next 10 years, it grows by another 20 to 30,000 people, just based on everything that you guys are doing as great business leaders in this community. I mean, your town is growing. And, we think it makes all the sense in the world to be part of that as an ag-based company and an ag-based community and an ag-based state.
We're going to switch now to the complex. One of the first things that come to mind when folks think of a large industrial complex, regardless of the industry, is the impact that it will have on natural resources, the environment. This is especially true when it comes to a processing facility. How will the company manage its wastewater, odor control, et cetera?
Good question, and totally respect that. So I'll start. I got to start by going back to our farmers. So our farmers live and breathe sustainability every day. They have to, or they won't survive. And we will be doing the same. We do the same in Fremont. We will be doing the same here. So as we look at designing this facility, one of the things that we will have, and this was quoted in the article that Jody Swan put out, of somewhere around $45 million, we'll build a wastewater treatment plant. We're working with the local folks here at ISG on that. And that facility, I'm not the technical person to go into the details of that, but suffice to say, that type of facility is incorporating all the latest technology available to us today that pretty much eliminates odor and eliminates the risk of a problem. But so we'll build that. That's part of the $500 million. It's already in the budget. Another part is we will have lagoons that will be covered, and we'll capture the methane gas off of them to run the boilers in the plant, so we use less energy. So the smell that you would typically get from a lagoon, you're not going to get, because we're covering them and capturing them. And then we'll have basins and retention swells, and I'm probably butchering all this language. Steve's sitting there grinning at me. But all these things to buffer any odor. Something else that you probably wouldn't realize is we do a draft, kind of think the NFL draft, with our member producers. We do a draft in January. So in January of 2021, we drafted all the pigs that they will deliver by day through the end of 2022. That's how far out in front. So we know how to stage the pigs coming in and out, so we we mitigate traffic consolidation issues. We eliminate having so many pigs on site at one time for the odor. The other thing that we will be building as part of that $500 million is a state-of-the-art rendering facility. Most people don't know this, but a lot of the bad smell from old plants is coming more from the rendering than the pigs or the wastewater. It's because you're heating up all the byproduct and making meat and bone meal and brown grease and choice white grease and things like that that just have an odor to them. So these new modern, and we're building one in Fremont too, these new modern rendering plants, they go through us, and trust me, I didn't know what a DAF was 3 years ago, but they go through a series of 4 DAFs and all this other stuff that by the time there's anything coming out to stack at the top of the building, it's almost pure air. And it's just a completely different level of technologies that are available to us today that weren't there. A lot of these technologies weren't even there 10 years ago. Is that fair? So we have a program we launched with our, I don't think I shared this, I got to share this. So our vision statement at Wholestone is to bring the consumer closer to the farmer. That's a pretty simple, but pretty difficult task. And so one of the things that we want to do is, if you think about it, the farmers own the crops, they farm the crops, they raise the pigs, they own the feed mills and the trucks that bring the pigs in. Now they own the plant. So you have full control and transparency and traceability from beginning to end. So we launched in 2021 a sustainability program where and we set up a website where each farmer has to enter in all their inputs, their waste, their feed, their antibiotic usage, their water usage, their electricity usage. And our goal is to be carbon neutral to carbon negative when it's all said and done. And we'll be tracking that and publishing a report every year across all of our farms and all of our plants. And the bottom line is people talk about sustainability like it's a buzzword. But when you're sitting down with the banks and you're borrowing money, you're bankers. Sustainability to bankers is about financial sustainability. And by doing all these things, and then it'll be on the website, so that farmer A knows what his data is, but he can see all the other farmers. He just doesn't know who they are. And just think about that. How's he getting? He's getting by with 2/3 less water per pig than I am. And the whole goal is to drive that, because what do the plant-based people hang their hat on? Is that they're better for the environment, right? But they only use soybeans. They use one component of soybeans and the other 2 go to waste, and they put nothing back. We use 2 of the 3 components to feed pigs, and we think when it's all said and done, we put it all back plus. We got to prove that. And we will over the next 3 to 5 years.
That's another 2-hour conversation.
It is,
on that
yes.
one. I want to get a little bit into logistics. You've selected your site, Benson and I-229. And you've explained a little bit why that's a good location. Logistically, both transportation, just some other things that need to fall into place. What is left to fall into place before you start turning dirt?
I mean, right now, just going through the permitting process, getting all the permits, and that's probably the lengthiest thing. You got to get all those in place. I mean, the land is already zoned heavy industrial, so that was a big positive out of the gate, but there's still a ton of permitting that has to be done. So we're just getting ready to start that process. So that's all got to happen before any dirt starts moving. That's why we hedged a little bit on whether we're ready to start by next spring or it's the following spring or the following fall, whenever. We didn't want to draw it in stone because we know there's a lot of work to be done now.
So we've talked a lot, and we're down to only a couple minutes, and I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's time. But one final question. You've talked a lot about housing. You've talked a lot about the economic opportunity for Wholestone Farms in terms of the size of the industry. You talked about housing. You talked about labor. What is the economic impact regionally if Wholestone Farms sets up shop here in Sioux Falls?
We haven't conducted yet, and we will do this, a formal study, but a rough study, taking a study that had been done, a year ago, Steve, and then updating a little bit, somewhere between 1.1 to 1.5 billion would, if you look at the greater Sioux Falls region, this area, once we were fully ramped up.
Okay. All right. Well, we have only a one more minute. I want to give you an opportunity to make any final comments about Wholestone Farms and yourself and about Sioux Falls.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, first and foremost, thank you, all of you, for giving me the opportunity to come here. Hopefully by being here and all the other meetings we're doing earlier today and later today, we're trying to get out in front and meet everybody and let them know who we are and what we stand for. And we're not just another packer. We're a farmer-owned system, and we take a lot of pride in that, and our farmer owners take a lot of ownership in that. And we, besides the GSD that I talked about earlier, we are really big on being part of the fabric of every community that we operate in. And we've done that in Fremont in a big way. And we want to do that here as well. And what I mean by that is we want to be involved in things like the Rotary and the Chamber and the Greater, I slip and say Greater Fremont. I'm on the board of the Greater Fremont Foundation, but the same thing here, and just become part of the fabric of the community, because our success is heavily dependent upon how well the community receives us and accepts us as a citizen and as a contributor to the community. And I would encourage any of you to reach out to, whether it's the head of the United Way or the Lutheran Social Services or the mayor of Fremont, and ask how Wholestone does things in their community. So with that, again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, I certainly appreciate thank you for joining us, and thank you for those final comments, particularly the part about being involved with Downtown Rotary. I'll be sure to have an application sent your way soon. So, Scott, thank you very much
Thank
for
you for
joining
having
us.
me.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
President Tony?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Scott, for pulling back the veil on Wholestone Farms and sharing what you're about and what your vision is. We do live stream all these. We do have the recording, and we are excited to have you as part of the community, but we'll hold you to that because we have a special place here, and we want folks that are corporate citizens to also be involved. So love to hear that.
One other thing, if I could, that I meant to mention and I didn't, is my board chairman, Dr. Luke Minion, is a resident here in Sioux Falls. He's the CEO of Pipestone, and they have a lot of stuff around here in Sioux Falls and Brandon. So, but he lives right here in town. What do you call the neighborhood he lives in? Willow Run. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Golf course. So.
Excellent. Well, that's something we strive for as we build community within our club, but the community at large, to have organizations that are involved through and through to continue to make this even more special place. So I want to thank you again for joining us. Looking ahead to next Monday, we're going to, hard to believe it'll be August next week. And what that means is it's back to school. We're going to have a program on what that's going to look like for the coming school year. You've all been reading. There's a resurgence across the country, the Delta variant. What that's going to look like. So we're going to have both the South Dakota Secretary of Education, Tiffany Sanderson, will be here, as well as our superintendent of the Sioux Falls Schools, Dr. Jane Stavum. So please come back and join us for that conversation on the year ahead, with some additional dollars and 1 year under her belt now, Dr. Stavum, as she leads that growing school district forward. We want to hear from her. And then also Rotary in the Know, we talked about engagement. Rotary in the Know, we're returning with that on August 11th, late afternoon. Stay abreast to the exact time, but we're going to have a tour of the new Jefferson High School and make that available. So we want to do that here in a couple of weeks. So with that, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you Monday. Thanks.